dating game had never looked into his background. Because had they? Had California decided to do any research at all, they would have found out that at that time he had already served 6 years in prison. He was a sex offender. He had viciously raped an 8-year-old. Is that enough? I mean, is that enough? Okay. Don't ask. So there he was, appearing on the dating game, sitting, like this, cool, with his smile on his face, charming, and good looking. And the Bachelorette chose him to go out on a date with. This was after, I'm very bad with dates, but it's after at least 3 murders. But he had not been accused of the 3 murders yet. He was accused of the rape of the 8-year-old. And because he's so clever, backstory, 8-year-old little girl skipping on her way to school, white Mary Janes, adorable little girl. A man is, as I say, trolling alongside of her in his car. This is in California, Hollywood. Good Samaritan is driving this way and stopped at a red light and sees this little girl and sees this man, and the little girl gets in the man's car. And the guy thought, that's a little funny. I'm going to follow him. So makes a U-turn. And as I interviewed him, he's saying to me, if I tell my wife what I'm doing, she's going to think I'm insane, nuts, going after some guy. It's probably his, daughter or his a friend's child. Nevertheless, this is back in the 70s. He went and followed, and then he sees the man get out with the girl. She got in happily. She jumped in the car, very happy. But when she got out, he was sort of dragging her towards an apartment. Just kind of pulling her a little. You can look at that 2 ways. I don't know what the other way is, but let's pretend there's a good way to look at it. This Good Samaritan didn't think there was a good way to look at it and called the police. Payphone, no cell phones, no anything back then. Police decided to check it out. A couple minutes later, knocked on the door. Man comes to the window. 1 minute, just got out of the shower. Okay, I'll wait 1 minute, says Camacho, the detective. Come out right now or I'm bashing in the door. No sound. Bashing in the door. And there was this seemingly dead girl, 8 years old, her little Mary Jane's on the side, her little white Mary Jane's in a pool of blood, nude, with an iron bar across her neck. And of course they thought she was dead. There was more. They said there was more blood than looked like to come out of the little girl. And no person to be found. No adult in the house. So as more detectives came, they realized she was still breathing. And they, did this, did that, raced her to the hospital. She was in the hospital for 9 months. Never could go back to school again. She's still alive now, and she testified at the trial. Okay, so where is this man? And who is this man? At the moment, the detectives had no idea. So, after a short time, they found out who it was. UCLA graduate, moved to this apartment, what's going on? Very brilliant man. 3 years. No, they could not find this man named Rodney Alcala. Where did he go? They had all of the LAPD, all of California was out looking for him. 3 years go by. Steve Hodel, who wrote the Black Dahlia Avenger, if you're into this genre, you probably know this. He was a rookie detective then. And he and all his men were, on this case. Finally, after 2 3/4 years, they finally got his picture, Rodney's picture, on the 10 Most Wanted. Go to the East Coast now. Now we're on the East Coast. We're at all girls camp, an arts camp. All girls arts camp, little girls. And he's a photographer. He graduated. He's a great photographer and charming. So he's at this all girls camp, and these 2 little girls go to the post office in rural New Hampshire to mail a letter. And at the post office in rural New Hampshire, it's pouring. So they decide to look at the 10 Most Wanteds. And one says to the next, doesn't John Berger look like our Rodney? Yeah, that looks just like Rodney. Well, his name is John John Berger, it says on it. No, I'm sorry, let me say. They knew him as John Berger in the camp. Excuse me, I see him. And so they see this Rodney Alcala and they say, doesn't John look a lot like this guy? Okay, so they go back to the camp, these little children, they tell the director, guess what? There's a look-alike. They say everybody has a twin somewhere in this world. You should see. This is John's twin. So fast forward a little bit, and they find out that, in fact, that is Rodney Alcala, John Berger, i.e. So Steve Hodel goes to New Hampshire, arrests Rodney. Long and short of it, he's in jail, but he gets out after less than 3 years because California at that time had what's called indeterminate sentencing, which means you can get sentenced for something. Let's say indeterminate means you can go 7 to 40 years. But if you're good, if you're on good behavior, and the psychiatrist says, oh, I think he's rehabilitated, you go. And he went, he got out. So he stayed in less than 3 years. He was on the run for 3 years, and now he's a sex offender. Well, within a month, he was rearrested for giving pot to a girl. He had taken a young girl. These are young girls, 13-year-olds in the mountains, and forced her to have pot and to kiss him, and the rangers came and found him back in jail again. Well, out again. Redeemed. The guy is perfect, to say the psychiatrist, so he's out again. And so begins a very bad rampage in which he then did, terrible things to many other young girls, women. His range was, serial murderers usually have a range and a type. So it's usually either, blonde, 20s, well-built, good-looking, or it could be, younger, or it could be old. It could be 60-year-olds or 70-year-olds that a person might want to do something bad to. His range was wider than most. It was from 8-year-olds to 32-year-olds, the oldest. And of course they're women, and of course they're lovely, and of course they're, sweet and everything. And the way he lured them was with his camera. He would go up to people and say, I'm in a contest, we could win. If I take a picture of you, on the beach or surfing or whatever, we could possibly win. And these people would say, okay, why not? We're on the beach, what could happen? But then he'd follow them home, or else he'd date them, or else something. And the women would end up dead. Well, the end of the dating game story is, well, not the end, but the middle is, she wouldn't go out with him. For some reason, she got freaked out when it was time for them to do their little thingy, to meet and to do it. And, she says to this day, and I say to all of you, because I've been doing this for so long, go with your gut. I mean, I don't know that they're coming after us, but in any event, she just had a bad feeling about him, and probably the bad feeling is what kept her alive, because, he was pretty ruthless. So where was I? So that's a little bit. And I'll just tell you a tiny bit about me. I've been in education my whole life. I started out as a teacher because that was what that's what my parents told me to do. So I started teaching junior high, high school. I taught in college. I taught creative writing. From there, I went into publishing. I've written many textbooks on grammar and composition. And from there, I went to become the editor of Kids Discover, which is a magazine, nonfiction, very highly regarded magazine. And from there, I wrote my first book, which is called Baby-Faced Butchers. Yeah, okay, all right. Do I look like this? Do I look like this lady? Baby-Faced Butchers is about, I'm sorry?
Some issues.
Yeah, I have issues, yes.
I know, that's why
I'm going to ask you about your issues. Why are you here? Why did you come?
The issue.
We're going to talk about this later. I'm going to ask each of you why you're here.
That much I can see.
Well, I've been in therapy. I can't tell you how long I still have, but we haven't figured out why I care.
Just keep going.
Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions afterwards. Why are you here? She made you come?
Very close.
Very close. Okay, lost that train of thought. So Baby-Faced Butchers is about two 15-year-old kids in Central Park, in New York City, who, and as they say, gutted a man in Central Park and, took out all the inside, stuffed it with rock, and put him in the, this is what I deal with, and put him in the lake. Well, the reason I got interested in that is because one of the two people who did that horrible thing lived up the street from me. And she's the same age as my daughter. When we were young, obviously, when my daughter was young, I would take her to the park, and Daphne would be at the park. And Daphne was an adopted young lady, sweet, little girl, I mean, only sweet. And she would come with her mother, as Jess would come with me, and they would play together. And then when it was time to go to school, they each went to different schools. Now, they weren't friends, but they were acquaintances in the park. And then, fast forward 15 years, or maybe 12 years, Daphne was accused and convicted of this awful murder, and everybody thinks that the person they murdered was just an alcoholic because it happened in Central Park. He was not. I mean, he drank, and he would go there at night, but he held a job during the day. And as I told you before, I get close to the family, so maybe I'm very close to the Morrow family, and they told me all about their brother and their son, and he was not a ne'er-do-well. He enjoyed drinking at night after work, so we would go there. And the park was not so cool then. It was, a little bit scary. So, but it wasn't that dangerous, I mean, back then. In any event, so that's how I got started. It was kind of a personal journey with Daphne. And then from there...
I think a friend of ours defended one of the killers.
That's right. That's why I remember the story. Lonnie Chris, I think.
Say the name again.
Lonnie Chris.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's right.
One of my close
He
friends.
defended
Well,
him.
tell him hello.
Well, I will.
Yeah, be sure to tell him. I was like, well, who did he defend?
One of the guys.
Christopher.
One of the
That's
guys.
why I knew it sounded so
Exactly.
familiar.
There's Christopher and Chris. I remember that because names are like
Well,
incredible.
it sounded so familiar.
He's mumbling and I'm saying I know I'm
Because Lonnie and I played
That's
golf.
right. You play golf with this guy. Well, anyway, these two young kids, not the killer, the attorney. Whoa. Well, the two of them, who were 15, got out of jail after 6 years. And, many people think that that's just absurd. But we could have a discussion, if you ever care to, about, the nature of evil, whether young people are fully developed in their brain, how to keep people accountable for what they do. Is Rodney Alcala, was he born evil, or did life make him evil? In his case, it doesn't look like life did much. I mean, he was not beaten. He was not tortured. Nothing bad happened to him. He lived a middle-class life. He graduated second in his class. He has an MFA degree. He's brilliant. He's good-looking. Go figure. And then there are these other people who, and none of the people I wrote about, I speak, okay, I just got back from, and then we're going to see the game. I just got back from California. I was in prison for about 5 hours because I'm doing this new book on tonight at 10 o'clock, watch 48 Hours, if you wish. It's CBS 48 Hours at 10 o'clock tonight, whatever. Ex-pro football player, gold digger, and wealthy man. Okay, so it was a triangle. Well, it wasn't really a love triangle, because one person says he didn't know about the other two, but okay. Naposky, who is the ex-pro football player.
Okay.
I'm sorry? His name is Eric Naposky, Patriots and Colts, linebacker. I still don't know what the linebacker is. I'm going to find out. He played running back and linebacker. Is there a difference?
Yeah, they're different.
They're
I've never heard
different.
of them.
No idea. I spoke to him, so I'll tell you about that. But so I was out in L.A., and I got permission after weeks of asking, and I have to sign my life away. And the minute I get there, they say, there's a no hostage policy, don't you? What? So it means that if he takes me hostage, nobody's going to help me. Well, fine. Thank you very much. That's a nice greeting. Hello, there's no hostage policy. Well, okay. So I went there, and I got permission to see him one-to-one with no glass. But that means that a detective has to sit there with me, gun, hand on gun. So there we are. So first you go in, and there's a black screen, and a black mirror, sort of, window. You say, could I speak to Eric Naposky? Well, you can't see anybody, so you don't know who you're talking to, and they do that for some security reason. So I'm saying, are you good looking or not? And he says to me, I'm pretty good looking, okay, And so they told me they're doing it for security. So then I get Eric Naposky, who comes down with a guard, and he's taken into room 84. Each of these rooms is this big, enough for a chair. So in order for me to get into room 84, they have to undo the first door, click me in, undo the first door. And I have badges, and I have all this kind of stuff. Undo, and then when that closes, they click me in the second door. No. And when that closes, they click me in the third, as if, really. So then they I get in the last door, and then I get to sit down with the guard, with the thing. So we're sitting down, and there's no glass, and there's this guy, shackled, talking to me. Well, I mean, I don't think he's a killer. But then I don't think most of these, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Just because he's been convicted, he has been convicted already. So, he looks at me with his clear eyes, and, I swear I didn't do it, just because I bought a 9mm, just because I, was at the right place, it was a setup.
What was he accused of?
Okay, so here we go. And I'll just use my fingers because it's easier for me. So there's Eric Naposki, pro football player, macho, big neck, big guy. And then there's Nanette Johnston, very petite, works out, gorgeous. They were boyfriend and girlfriend on the side. Now, Nanette is living with William McLaughlin. Now, William McLaughlin is a 54-year-old while she was 27-year-old man who invented a machine that separates plasma from blood. And as such, that machine went all over the world, and he became a multi-millionaire to the tune of something like $88 million back in the 94s. I don't know years. She put an ad in the paper, in a singles magazine, saying, for wealthy men only. I know how to take care of a man if he knows how to take care of me. Well, okay. Okay, man. All right, man.
That's how I met my wife. Just for the record. I read that back then.
You're much more interesting than I am. Come on. Would you be my sidekick? Okay, we'll take this on the road.
Well,
Can I take him on the road with me?
Absolutely.
I don't want to know too much more.
I'll pay the cards again.
Don't you come with me, I'm saying that. So anyway, this Bill McLaughlin, very wealthy, well-established, intelligent man, decides, hey, he had been divorced about 4 years before, acrimonious, all that stuff. His wife had moved to Hawaii. There he was alone in his $1 million mansion on Balboa Cove, looking at the yachts, doing all this alone. Okay, end of story is, he's dead, and they're alive. So who did it? Trial just finished. We're on a different case now. We're no longer. We're not on. Okay. So where I was the other day in LA, seeing Naposki, who has just been accused. I was at the trial as well. He was accused and convicted of the murder. And the next trial is coming up on the 4th, the end of this week or soon. He'll probably get life.
is he black?
No. That's a little secret about true crime that you may not know. In this genre, rarely is there black people. Don't ask. I don't know.
Well, of course, you said football.
Yeah, no, he's a big white guy, 6'2". He's proud to tell me. I don't know how big your arms are, but he tells me his are 22 inches. How big are your arms?
24.
How big are yours? I want real men here. How big are your arms?
Only a psycho measures his arms. So think about that would have been my first clue to this guy being like that.
But if you were to listen to him, he's not guilty. For everything, and as you know, I do tons of research. So for everything that the prosecutor, who is brilliant, by the way, his name is Matt Murphy. This is the second case I've been interviewing him on. He was brilliant. Everything that Murphy said was the reason that it had to have been Naposki. Naposki says, but couldn't it have been that way? But couldn't it have been this way? And I'm going to just say one more thing, and then we're going to watch this. Tonight, when you watch 48 Hours, I don't know if they're going to mention this, but 2 New York lawyers did defend Naposki out in California. It's not usual. He also had a California lawyer. And the reason he did it was the following. Naposki grew up in Eastchester, or East something up there, and Naposki was a football player. As a kid, he was a big kid. His best friend, John Papalardo, was a basketball player. Well, one day there was a rumble at their school, some kind of a thing where all the basketball players were on John Papalardo's case. They were going to beat him up. That's in the boys' gym right there. Naposki is working out here. Naposki hears that his best friend John is going to get the shit kicked out of him. And as John told me, this lawyer, who is reputable, even if Naposki may not be, he said, I saw, Naposki saw what was happening, came in and said, you want to take somebody on, take me on. And that ended that. So that John feels like he owes Naposki. So John defended him. John wasn't the actual defense attorney because his partner was. But it was a very personal loss because he believes his friend is innocent. John believes Naposki is innocent. And after speaking to Naposki, I think he might be. But as a writer, I can't do that. I keep that out of the book as well. What I try to do is really just tell it like it is and embellish. You're looking at me as if I'm a liar. You're saying, she knows who's guilty, right?
No.
Okay,
I was so far.
Okay, you're still. We're on the road now, right?
Beyond that,
Okay.
I was on different pages.
But on that point,
Okay.
since you do so much research,
Yes.
you could possibly be talking to more people and seeing more of the picture than even the attorneys involved in the cases.
Yes.
Do you ever discover things that you think may mean something or be important, and then go back and say to the defense attorney or the prosecutor?
In this case,
Did
yes.
you think about that? Or?
Not in Alcala, because Alcala had been tried for, he was on death row before any of this, so he's done. But in this new case, I do have information from everybody, and I actually met with the prosecutor for lunch the other day and said, well, what if, and not saying that Naposki told me, what if Naposki really got that gun for his girlfriend, like he said, and gave it to her as a Christmas present, and somebody can prove that it was given to her? Why couldn't she have hired somebody else? The prosecutors are pretty arrogant in general, and he sort of sneered at me like, yeah, right, that's what he told you, that he gave it to her as a birthday present? But he said he has to check it out whenever he gets any new evidence or any new, slant on it. He will do his due diligence. So I plan on writing him. As soon as I listen to this tape, I spoke to Naposki for 5 hours. Do you have any idea how long it takes to transcribe 5 hours of tape? Well, it takes a day, at least. So once I get that done and I figure out what Naposki actually said to me instead of what I think I heard, then I can talk to Matt and say, Matt, maybe check this out. Because, as much as Matt wants to win, and he did win already, there are going to be appeals. And if there is some new information, I don't think he wants this in, although, you read lately that a lot of the prosecutors just want to get another notch in their belt, just want to win, and they don't care, as you see all these people now out on DNA evidence or other evidence that just come through, that the prosecutor has hidden. So maybe prosecutors aren't, I don't know if you want to win or not. Let's take a moment. Anybody want to ask me anything before we actually look at the dating game? Now, as I told you, the dating game took place after he had already murdered several people and had raped the 8-year-old. After the dating game, he then went on another spree and killed at least 4. He's called a narcissistic, sadistic serial murderer, which means he doesn't just shoot them up. It's just not one of these things where you come in. And I'll read you a little bit later if you can stand it. And if you don't want to hear a little bit of the gruesome details, you can sit here and listen. But let's see how charming he is. Shall we try that? And you'll get an idea of the dating. It's not a good scene of dating.
How the date went, or no?
She chose not to go on.
She chose not to go on the date.
She had
Cheryl
an
Ryder
intuition
had a
about
gut
it.
feeling that this was not going to work out well. Yes, she's the one I was talking about. Yeah, so probably safer.
Wow.
Are we embarrassed to have been a part of this generation?
No.
Oh, get out of here!
Isn't that just unbelievable?
I didn't surprise to Stella before. If we didn't know it was really, you'd think it was a Saturday Night Live skit of like a fake TV show.
She looks like a serial murderer. If you ask me,
More embarrassing than that was the Newlywed Game.
The Newlywed King. Okay, what happened?
They had 3 couples, and they would ask them embarrassing questions, like, where was the last time you did it? On the kitchen table. And they had to agree to win points.
Oh my
The
God.
husband and the wife,
Yeah. So Yes, Rodney Alcala. Would you have picked him out as a serial murderer?
I would have gone on.
I would have gone on the date too.
I would not have gone on the show.
Oh, yes. But were any of us dumb enough to go on this show? I mean, he wasn't, he looks like that.
She didn't see him, she only heard him.
Right. And then
Ted Bundy was a very dynamic, good-looking guy.
Exactly. They're charming.
A lot of similarities.
Exactly.
If you met him in a bar or some other way socially, then that's what really counts, not this.
Yes. Correct. Yeah. So he was tried 3 times. The third time, which was just last year, in 2010, third time he got the death sentence because DNA had come to the fore and they discovered that he had in fact been the murderer of other people, and those cases had been unsolved for 30 years. So,
Was the third trial because he was tried for each murder?
the first 2 times he was tried for the murder of one girl. And then this one little girl, her name was Robin Samso. She was on Huntington Beach doing cartwheels and doing ballet with her best friend, Bridget Wilver. They were both 13 years old. Robin was on, after they did their thing, they're on the beach doing their thing, and this photographer walks over to them. I'm going to get you, you're going to be famous, you'll be in a contest, you'll get $100, great, okay. Took their pictures. They were having a great time. Robin looks at her watch and says, I'm going to be late for my ballet class. She goes off, they go off. The next thing, Robin has not gone to, she has never shown up at her ballet class. She was a beautiful little, we have some pictures somewhere, but we don't have to do that now. Beautiful blonde girl whose picture was all over the paper. Never got to the ballet class, never got home. They had people out looking for her. About maybe 3 weeks later, her skeletal remains were found in the mountains of Sierra Madre Mountains up there in California. He had followed her home. And then you just have to fill in blanks, as to what happened. He was tried for that murder because a sketch artist working with Bridget Wilver, 13 years old, did a sketch, and I've been in contact with the sketch artist. She's wonderful, and she reminded me of what Bridget was like back then. Did a great composite of Rodney. And then all of a sudden, other people were coming forward saying, I've seen him on the beach, I've seen him, and they did police lineups, and, that's the one. So finally, they got him on that. He was convicted, tried and convicted, and then had to be retried because of various errors in the trial. That often happens. The judge let in some information that wasn't supposed to come in. Okay, retrial. Somebody withheld information that was supposed to come in. Okay, retrial. But then DNA came in many years later. So then he was tried for 5 murders in California, convicted of all of them. New York has just asked to extradite him to New York for 2 more murders he committed here while he was at that New Hampshire camp with the little children doing his photography. He had murdered 2 people here. One was a TWA stewardess, and I interviewed her boyfriend back then. He is now an attorney in Brooklyn, a very lovely man, has never gotten over his childhood sweetheart. They were both, about 20 at the time. Still cries when he talks about her. And then another person named Ellen Hover, whose father owned Ciro's nightclub in New York. She was a socialite, and he also found her on the streets of New York when he was there and managed to murder her. So New York is asked to extradite him to New York, which will happen probably this month. But he will be tried for 2 more murders, even though he's on death row and he's not getting out, for the families, they say. That is the reason, because these families would like some closure. Have I depressed you all enough? Are we done with this? I'm sorry.
Who defends him? His public defenders defend him?
The interesting thing is, in the last case, in his last trial a year ago, with wavy gray hair, he was his own defense attorney. The other 2 is, public. I'll read you one thing here. I'd like to do it. I may, and then we're done. And then you can, let me just read this. I'll start with someone. So, what I was saying was, in order to write a book that anybody would want to read, rather than, like a police report, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, ninth in. You have to make a little bit of a surround. So I'll just give you a little bit of surround so you have an idea of what happens. At 7 a.m. on November 10th, 1977, the temperature in Los Angeles was already in the low 70s. A few high, dark clouds topped the sky as the sun began poking through. Wednesday promised to be another perfect day. As a West Los Angeles patrol unit was cruising the still sleepy streets, the officers received an ambulance and dead body call. Immediately they turned on their sirens and headed to the location. And then I described Mulholland Drive, which is where they went. It's a very secluded area near Marlon Brando's house. And so after driving on the paved road, the cops headed onto the service road and then onto the secluded Franklin Canyon Drive. As they bumped along on the finely powdered dirt road, one cop called out, "Hey, what's that on the side?" Coming closer next to a rugged area of dense brush and trees known as California's chaparral, they came upon a body. It took only a few seconds for the officers to take in the carnage. Here comes carnage. Can you stand it? If you can't, cover your ears. The female was on all fours, low to the ground. Alcala posed all his victims as well. When he was finished doing the terrible things he did, he then put them in a position which would be the most compromising position for any people who came in to find. So you can imagine, okay. Her knees were bent with the tips of her toes on the ground. Her inner thighs and knees were pointed outward. She wore no panties. Her buttocks were spread wide. Her face was tucked so tightly against her breasts that it looked as if her neck was broken. The top of her head was touching the ground between her knees. Her right hand was pulled under her body. The fingers of that hand were curled directly under her lacerated anus, which was 2, 3, or 4 inches off the ground. I think I should not keep going because it gets worse. The point is, he did some pretty terrible things and then posed them in a position that would be even more terrible. And somehow, this is what he got off on. And as I say, he was not abused. So what is it? What is it? He photographed.
Did he photograph them?
He had, so one way that they really got him, aside from he had a storage locker in Seattle where he had some 2,000 pictures of young people, and they put that up on the internet after he was, convicted, so that anybody whose picture was there, they should call up, or anybody who was missing a loved one whose picture is there, call up, because we're, the investigation is ongoing. There's some 2,000 pictures. You can go on the internet now. You can see about 150 of them. The others were so horrible that they didn't put them up.
The pictures of them dead?
No, the pictures of them alive. But you should see the pictures. I mean, sometimes they're young and they're looking like he had drugged them, or they didn't have clothes on. I'm sorry, they're on the internet. On the internet, they don't show it that bad, but you can still see that he has. That we're in the storage locker that the cops have. So, yes, the police firmly believe that he could be as bad a serial killer as ever there was, but they have yet to find the proof, but they're sure. Okay, so now I'll just read one last thing and then I'm done. And this is so this is the third trial. Do we have a picture of Rodney on the third trial? Because it's interesting to see him. You saw him how young and handsome. That's your idea of handsome. He was. That's young and handsome. Or whatever. 1978. Oh, he's going to come right on in a second. Yeah.
Number one.
Yes.
What's your best time?
The best time is at night. Nighttime.
Why do you say
Is this
that?
the whole thing?
Because that's the only time.
No.
Yeah, just as we begin.
Oh, here. I see. Okay. There he is. Okay. Can you stop?
It's like Tiny Tim.
Exactly. That's Robin Samso, the little 13-year-old girl who he was convicted of twice. That's where. There he is. This is him. He stood up and defended himself, and he said, "Mr. Alcala, how long was your hair back then?" He'd say, "Oh, my hair was, 3 inches long." "Now, Mr. Alcala," and he kept doing this thing with himself. He's talking to himself, this other person. It was,
So schizophrenia.
That too. We can add that to it. So Matt Murphy, I'll just read one thing. Thankfully, he was terrible as an attorney. He was talking about, Matt Murphy is the prosecutor, talking about Rodney Alcala defending himself. He said, thankfully, he was terrible. A lot of sociopaths think they're smarter than the attorneys, smarter than everybody. These guys obsess about facts and lose sight of the bigger picture. Intellectually, they're smart, but they're never as smart as they think they are. Trying cases is a skill. So just like Ted Bundy, Alcala was absolutely terrible, and he even studied law. So the key to winning a case, says Matt Murphy, is to get into the minds of the jurors. And because psychopaths and sociopaths are unable to get into the mind of anybody but themselves in order to get what they need, they can't even imagine. He sat there and he just sort of talked about himself and, can you see my earring in the picture? Because that earring is going to prove that I didn't do it. And, it's like, and then he plays Arlo Guthrie's song about the Vietnam War. He played 7 minutes of it. And it went, kill, kill, kill. And many people had to leave the courtroom. What he was trying to say was, you're as bad, you jurors, are as bad as anybody who kills because you're going to kill me. So he's trying to make that point. So meanwhile, people were just like, sick. So, sure.
Even though he's on death row, you said.
Yes, he was.
His crimes involve pedophilia.
Correct.
In prison, those people have a very, very, very difficult time. And so my question is, in any way, do you know about what his living,
yes,
which could be his own hell right now?
Probably in isolation.
He's in isolation. Exactly. See, stay with her.
Oh, that's what she meant.
No, right. So of course, he's in his own cell, and he gets I think he gets 1 hour to go out, and he goes out into his own yard. He doesn't go out with the gen pop, as they call it. He doesn't go out there. But he wrote to me. I wrote to him, and he wrote to me. So we had this little correspondence until he decided that he was going to try to control my life. So he said, before I write this next letter to you, I'd like you to read every page of my trial, every page of this. And I said, before we correspond yet again, I would like you to tell you I am not reading any of that. I just want to know what your this was like, what your childhood